I'm Will Reuter, and this is HBA After Hours, a podcast from the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. Welcome to another episode of HBA After Hours, the podcast produced by the local Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. As always, I'm Will Reuter, your host. Today's episode brought to you by Bavard Insurance and Builders First Source. My co-host today, as always, is
Keith Sorrow. I'm the publisher of Design KC and the real estate book, A New Home Guide of Greater Kansas City. I can't even speak today, and I'm on a podcast.
Well, luckily, we can edit out your inability to speak today. It is going to make for an interesting podcast.
It will.
So
it's great.
If it sounds like a solo effort on the edit, I apologize for Keith's brevity. We're going to be talking today about scams and possible threats to your down payment, this being the biggest transaction any one individual is ever going to make in their life. So we have a resident expert within the HBA and the local market. With us today is our guest, Marty Albertson with Stewart Title. Marty, say hey to the folks.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Marty, tell us a little bit about, how you came to the market, just maybe a little bit about Marty, the man himself as well, and then, kind of how you came to be the Kansas City financial services guy who knows more about this than anybody else.
So I grew up in Excelsior Springs, Missouri. I've never lived more than 20 minutes from where I was born. And as all title and escrow people, you just kind of end up in this industry as a fluke. I was at a very bad stage in life growing up because my dad got a brain tumor when I was a freshman in high school. And so our family kind of went from being poor to destitute during that time when he was critically ill. And when I was a senior in high school, my cousin Randy Mitchell was in the title business, and he said, "What are you going to do next year?" I said, "I'm going to go to college and play golf." And he said, "No, you're not. I know your situation." He goes, "Why don't you come to work at the title company so you'll have something to fall back on? And, when your dad passes away, maybe you can go back to college at that point or whatever." So I got in when I had just turned 18. And by the time my father passed away, I had quite a bit of experience. And then before you know it, I bought a title agency in Platte City when I was 26 years old. I ran that for a long time. I sold it to Stewart Title 22 years ago, thinking that I would just manage my little one-office agency that I had, and then figure it out from there. Then the Great Recession hit. I took over their Kansas City operation, kind of turned it around during a very difficult economic time. And then Stewart kept giving me other states that were broken. Before you know it, I was running the east half of the country for Stewart Title. Then I got old, and about a year ago, kind of stuck my hand up and said, I really don't want to travel like this the rest of my life. And I was fortunate enough they let me go back into my old job and step back into just being division president in Kansas City. So we have 15 offices in Kansas City. Stewart is a publicly traded international, one of the big four title insurers. We are the underwriter as well as the local office, so we can be much more nimble on underwriting issues. We got into the HBA during that Great Recession. We were members of every organization and civic organization you could possibly be in, and in many of those organizations, we were one of many.
Sure.
There would be 20 title companies in a room at an event. And so when the economy tanked during the Great Recession, we sat down as a group and said, what's the most important investment we can make and not just be one of 20?
Right.
And the HBA to us was unrepresented from title and escrow companies. And so we saw an opportunity. We had one salesperson, Misty Hansen, who felt very connected to the organization. So we said, let's go all in. And so we stopped joining a lot of other clubs and really supported Misty's efforts here. And here we are many years later, very proud of the partnership and the connection we have and the work that Misty's done on behalf of both the national and the local Home Builders Association.
Well, we are enormously grateful for not only the human investment that you've made in having people in HBA rooms and building and maintaining and growing relationships. But, Stewart Title was there for the HBA when there wasn't much out there at all. And, the fact that we've still got a parade of homes, and not only a parade of homes, but the second largest parade of homes, it was because it was folks like Stewart Title that stepped up during very difficult circumstances and kept the ball moving downfield. To
Without members, it would be a big problem.
And where we could find ourselves being able to compete in the economy. So Stewart Title, not only a great supporter of the HBA, but of the industry writ large. So that's the feel good element of this. We got to go into things that feel less than good, which is what the topic of the podcast today.
I remember closing on a home, and then I remember even a couple of weeks later getting a note email wise that didn't look quite right, and it was trying to make it sound like it was coming from the title company.
Correct.
And I remembered in closing, if you see something, blah, 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 right? But don't jump, don't click on it, don't go. And I literally called the title company after that, and they said, nope, that's not us. Go ahead and delete that, right?
Right.
Now we're getting into this crazy new world of AI.
Correct.
What are we seeing as some of the fraud moments that this new creative universe is getting for us?
So fraud in real estate has really evolved the past 10 years. In the beginning, I made the mistake personally of taking a very unsophisticated view of a fraudster. I was thinking a nerd in his mom's basement hacking people, or a guy in an internet cafe in India that was trying to rip people off. You have to realize the fraudster, these are crime organizations, IT trained in high-rise buildings in foreign countries. This fraudster is a massive crime organization all over the world. They're being very successful at ripping people off. And then when you step back and you think about what else has changed the past 10 or 20 years, the introduction of the iPhone about 20 years ago, and then social media, and all of a sudden, every individual in the country is using new technology and new social media platforms without any cybersecurity training. And everybody has to realize it's the biggest purchase of your life. Of course you're a target. It doesn't matter if you're a seller or a buyer. You are a target while you're going through a real estate transaction. And you just have to realize that. And fraudsters will find you, and they're really good at finding you. Your example that you gave,
it said it was a short escrow payment.
Yeah,
trying to get me to add dollars to it.
America is the safest place in the world to invest in real estate. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but we have a much better land registration system than most countries have. It's just safer here. But when you record documents and you make them public record, there are people, just typical salespeople, that will data mine the public record, and then they'll time it right after purchase, right after financing, and they'll mail you something trying to sell you something. It's not necessarily fraudulent, but it also doesn't make it quite fair or honest, right? They'll make it look like it's coming from your lender, your title company. They might be trying to sell you credit life insurance. And you just have to know, that document got recorded, now people are gonna mail me stuff. And you kind of have to be on the lookout for it. And we've faced that problem for many years.
Right. When you say this is the biggest transaction you're ever going to enter into, how many times do you ever actually enter into that transaction? People don't know what they don't know. They're not buying a house a week. It's not like, I can recognize on a gas pump when there's a credit card skimmer because it looks different because I was just here last week.
Correct.
It's you don't know what to look for. So what are some of those common things that people ought to be on the lookout for as they are, pursuing this transaction?
For a long time, I couldn't figure out how fraudsters were interjecting themselves in a real estate transaction and how they were timing their communications perfectly so that people fell for them. We were very slow to figure it out, but we now know that in this past 20 years of iPhones, in this past 15 years of social media becoming a thing. If an individual, so most buyers are husband and wife, married couples, whatever, if at any point in their history they had ever clicked on a phishing email or a text message and mistakenly provided their login credentials to their personal email account, if they've ever done that, we now know what the fraudster did so that they now time this perfectly. They haven't looked at every email that's hit that inbox all these years. The only thing they did when they got the login credentials is they went into that personal email account and they set rules. And those rules said, any email that comes in that says purchase, sale, funds for closing, wire transfer, I want you to forward that email to the fraudster and I want you to delete the forward. That rule was set in their personal email account and nobody's ever told them.
That's amazing.
You can change your login and password 50 times.
But the rules.
If you
still
don't
already
undo
there.
the rules, the rules stick. So what happens in a real estate transaction? A realtor, a loan officer, a title company employee sends a legit email that gets intercepted.
Now they have your info.
Now
Even
they
more.
have all the info they need for the transaction, the proposed closing date, how much money are we talking about, and they have the email signature blocks and email addresses of related parties to the transaction that they can now spoof. And they're really good at spoofing, and AI has helped them, right? I mean, you can now create a website using AI in a matter of seconds, where you used to have to hire somebody to do that.
Right.
Well, you can also do these type of things at very little trouble and start email addresses that are close to the one you're trying to spoof. And then what happens the day before closing is you send a buyer a spoofed email that looks like it's coming from the escrow officer or looks like it's coming from the realtor, and you say, change of plans. If you want to close tomorrow, you now need to wire your money here. And people fall for it a high percentage of the time. Stewart has a very important third-party partner, a company named Certified out of Austin, Texas.
Okay.
They do a lot of things to help us fight fraud and protect our customers. And once a year, they come out with a state of wire fraud report. They just released the 2025 version of that. In a real estate transaction, 1 in 4 people are targeted with some sort of fraudulent communication.
25%.
25%.
Huh.
1 in 20 fall for it.
Oh, so 20% of the 25% fall for it.
1 out of every 20 people that receive fraudulent communications actually wire money to the wrong place. Those odds are just going up year after year after year, and they're getting more sophisticated with their attacks. It's pretty scary. So the first thing I would say, if you're a seller or a buyer, you are a target. And there's a high likelihood that you're going to receive some sort of communication, text, email, at some point during that transaction that's not coming from the party you think it's coming from. I fall into that trap, Will, when you send me an email, I read it to myself in your voice.
Uh-huh.
You can't do that anymore.
Right.
My first thought has to be, why
You wanna hear
why
Will-
would Will be emailing me?
You want to hear Will's voice?
But you know what I'm saying? Our
podcast.
guard is just down with people we know.
Right.
We're doing business with them. It's not unusual for a realtor, loan officer, title company employee, builder to be emailing me right now. But you really have to think, especially if there's any urgency connected to that communication, is this legit? Does this make sense? Is this what I've been told up to this point? Title companies don't change our wiring instructions. We just don't.
You're not going
Right.
to have a last minute change of
We're not
plans.
going to have a last minute change.
And
You're not going to send your money someplace else.
And as I understand it, you wire it, you're not getting it back. It's like very, 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 very difficult.
So the most important thing, and a lot of people who have been victims before or might stumble upon this podcast the day they are a victim, I'll tell you this. Speed and passage of time is everything. The quicker you realize you've wired your money to the wrong place, and the quicker you get the right people involved, the higher your odds that you're going to get all or some of that money back. If you find out 3 days later you've wired money to the wrong place, you're in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So passage of time is just key. And the mistake I see most victims make, and these are victims, this is one of the most violating things that can ever happen to you. Victims not knowing where to turn, and almost everybody goes down the same path. You'll spend way too much time with the sending bank, the receiving bank, and local law enforcement. And those people just don't know how to help either. Mm-hmm. And so you waste valuable time thinking you're dealing with the right people. And what you'll find with banks, and they all do the same, they feel bad for you and they'll tell you our fraud department is working on it. And then months will go by with that same answer being given to you. Our fraud department is looking into it. They're covering their own tails as well, sure. Right? They have liability or potential liability. Local law enforcement, they're not very good at finding crime organizations in other countries.
Nor should they expect to be.
Or tracing money that's been converted to crypto or went to 1 million different bank accounts. Love local law enforcement. It's the wrong people. So knowing what to do when you're in that situation, I hope we can help with that today as well.
Yeah, so who are those entities to engage when you know, maybe it's moments or minutes or an hour or a day, whatever. When in that life cycle, who is the 911 of this to call and get the right people engaged?
So I mentioned Certified and all the things they do to help us. Fraud recovery services is probably the most important. And so for anybody that gets frustrated, local law enforcement, sending bank, receiving bank, you don't have to spend very much time Googling wire fraud that you'll end up at Certified's website. Certified, because of the great work they've done and the great technology and services they provide, has a direct line to the Secret Service. And it would surprise a lot of people to know that financial crimes are actually investigated by the Secret Service. Yeah. If I get a call, and it does happen, Friday night at 8:30, and it could be a file Stuart Title's involved with, or it could be somebody just reaching out to me as a subject matter expert. I had a client that's wired money to the wrong place. I'm calling Certified because I know they're going to call the Secret Service. Mm-hmm. I don't have a way to contact the Secret Service.
You don't have the direct line to the Secret Service, right?
And within minutes...
You got the callback number. They were looking for you.
Every time I've made that call, within minutes, the Secret Service has froze bank accounts under federal law. And now you have a fighting chance.
Yeah. It's a pause button on the...
Correct. Yeah. And that's usually when the fraudster knows they're in trouble, because they'll make a move to make sure the money's in the account and make sure that they can move it. You know what I mean? They're not going to get to all the money at once.
Right.
Because they're too good at this and they know how it works. When they can't make that first move, they know it's over.
Mm-hmm. Do they abandon it typically, or
yes,
do they? Okay.
Because they don't want to get caught,
right.
And they don't want to be traceable. So time matters, and the quicker you get the Secret Service involved, the better your odds of recouping your funds.
So we see, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we see, that's one example, right, of fraud where you're asked to wire money to another place. What's another good example that you might see around the time of a real estate transaction like this?
So first of all, when it comes to wire fraud, the buyer's funds for closing are just one of the things they target. That was probably the first one we saw when it comes to wire fraud. That was target number one. Can we get an unsophisticated buyer? Think of a first-time home buyer that's never been through this before. The percentages are just higher that they're going to fall for this than somebody that's purchased real estate in the past. So buyer's funds for closing, seller proceeds, if they can intercept the seller's communication to the title company of where they want the proceeds to go, They'll change the wiring instructions, try to dupe the title company into sending the proceeds to the wrong place. The seller's payoff is, if you look at average losses from various types of real estate wire fraud, the payoff's actually the biggest one. If they can ever get the title company to wire the payoff to the wrong place, that's like $250,000 on average for a loan payoff. Those are the three flavors of wire fraud.
Got it.
Now we have seller impersonation fraud. Think of how much land in America is owned by, especially vacant land, somebody that lives elsewhere. They might live in another state, but they inherited a farm in Caldwell County, Missouri, right?
Right.
They will now try to get a realtor to list that property. They're impersonating the seller, and they're trying to dupe a buyer into buying property that the fraudster doesn't even own. Just yesterday,
That would seem like a real long game.
it's a long game, but they're smart enough to discount the asking price.
Wow.
Everybody loves a deal.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
In a down real estate market, realtors are really excited to get a call about a listing, so their guard's down a little bit.
Yeah.
A red flag, if I was a real estate agent, if I can't meet the seller face to face, no matter how compelling the excuse, that's a red flag. I'm going to be worried, am I really dealing with the actual owner of the property or not? As a title company, we have several ways that we fight that. The most basic being, anytime we are asked to insure the sale of vacant land, we mail a letter to the owner of the property at the address listed on the tax bill, and we ask them, are you selling your property? We've had a file opened up, want to make sure you're selling your property. That's one way. Through Certified, and they have a new technology called Match, we can also verify the identity of the proposed seller. So if it's someone we don't have the ability to sit down with face to face, they're not going to use one of our approved notaries, I can now send them a request and through this technology verify their identity. It's very interesting how Certified accomplishes that. And I don't want to give away their secret sauce.
Right.
Because a fraudster might also listen to this podcast.
If they're smart.
But we have ways of knowing, are we dealing with the person we're supposed to be dealing with? And that helps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about it now multiple times in a short period of time, that this being an incredibly large financial transaction, those only occur with high degrees of trust.
Yes.
And so when the trust gets broken, or there is an inability to have that level, that depth of understanding of the person, the counterparty to this transaction, it can freeze or cripple, housing markets, and that's a huge liability for this industry that we're speaking on behalf of and speaking about. Not only is that transaction important to the individual that is buying or selling the home, it's the lifeblood of this entire industry and the trust in that transaction volume. So, what we do know is that no matter how quickly these mitigation efforts can be put in place, the criminality is always one step ahead or two steps ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, think of these crime organizations that I described. AI, they're just going to get there faster than we are, right?
Right.
Because there's so much money that they can make through fraudulent efforts. They're better educated when it comes to IT, right? They're cooking up schemes of how they use AI to enhance what they do right now.
Right.
We're talking about AI,
Right.
Right.
right? And they're just going
They're
to be
embedded. They're in bed with it, literally. Yeah.
Correct.
And so, as these, when you describe the people that have had this perpetuated on them as victims, I think that's also potentially psychologically one of the barriers to acting quickly as well, is just that sense of embarrassment. It's like, oh, surely this couldn't have happened to me. Like, I'm a smart person. Like, I wouldn't, have this brick thrown through my window. I'm going to have, tempered glass and it's not going to break. But, this is not a victim shaming exercise. This is an effort to put people's heads on a swivel that, hey, we don't want you to be so fearful that you don't enter into this transaction, because you do need to buy a home, you do need to sell your home, but it is just a little bit more fraught with peril because of the level of sophistication out there trying to get at those resources that you're trying to either give or receive.
I openly talk about fraud. I give presentations almost on a weekly basis. I'm here today because when, especially first-time buyers, when they fall victim to this, early on they just say, why didn't somebody tell me I was a target? Why didn't somebody warn me? I'm trying to get the word out, and I'm trying to warn those people, you're a target, and you need to keep your eyes open for this, so that you don't get duped into sending money to the wrong place.
And you know,
And there's
the HBA, the industry, we want to be that source of optimism and consumer confidence out there. And so not everything can be sunshine and rainbows. And we need to talk about, you know, both sides of the same coin. Home ownership is an amazing thing that, you know, it's the cornerstone of the American dream, things that people aspire to. But there are those that want to take shortcuts in life and don't want to work for those resources, and they want yours. And so this is just what other tools can we add to a consumer's tool belt to make sure that they can move forward with this transaction, but just have a little bit more awareness about some of those that would step in between.
well, and protection.
Yep.
What are some of the things they can do to protect themselves, you know, in this scenario?
So I'm an investor as well, both in commercial and residential real estate. I have never wired money as part of a real estate closing, and I have never received a wire for my proceeds. I am more than happy to bring a cashier's check to closing. I can hand it to the title company knowing the right people are getting those funds. So at a very basic level, there's nothing saying you have to wire money as part of a real estate transaction.
That's important to know, yeah.
And it's okay to go old school. And yes, you have to make a trip to the bank and pick up a cashier's check, but that's safe.
But you generally have to anyway.
We got
even when you're
way
wiring
too
it, right?
comfortable wiring money.
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic when it was almost required.
Just out of convenience, we got way too comfortable with it. So that would just be the most basic thing. I can't even take it for granted if a customer tells me through the life of a transaction, we're just going to bring a cashier's check to closing. Those same people, if they get a fraudulent email the day before closing, will go wire money because somebody asked them to, even though I think they're bringing us a cashier's check.
And they don't want to be a hassle, so we'll just do what they ask, you know.
Correct. So, I mean, we never exchange wiring instructions by email. So if you're face-to-face with the title company and you're exchanging wiring instructions that way, that's the safest way, face-to-face. If you're doing it within a secure portal of some sort, maybe call the title company before you send a wire at a known phone number, not one that shows up in some fraudulent communication, and just verify the wiring instructions one last time to make sure you have the right instructions. That's a way to make it much more safe. You just have to be guarded, and you can't take anything for granted. You have to know that you know that you know that you're sending it to the right place.
It's better maybe to annoy or irritate someone on the other end about saying, okay, you're really serious, this is the one. I would rather have someone be annoyed at me for having asked a question for the 10th time as opposed to, again, not wanting to be a bother.
How about even on websites? Like when you go to your bank, right, on there, constantly warning about fraud, signatures from your, you know, people that you work with in the banking industry, all that. That's all helpful, you know, to get us thinking. But if they're so close at making it look like it's the person you talked to down the street last week, it's gonna make you think. So if it makes you think, take a step and find out, right? Ask questions.
For sure.
Trust your gut, too.
Yep, one eye
if
open.
something doesn't feel right, chances are
It's
probably
not right.
isn't. It costs you, what, 30 seconds to a minute to make a verifying phone call or a stop by when you're out running errands. I mean, the the risk of not following through on your instincts to be satisfied and to gain that peace of mind, the cost to not doing
Oh, it's
that
crazy.
is enormous. It's your entire life savings.
I've had the, I don't want to say privilege, I guess from a learning standpoint, it was a privilege, but 2 experiences very close. One was with a close family member, and it was quite an elaborate hoax over the phone. Talked her into going into wiring money to protect her daughter, don't tell anybody, that type of stuff, right? Crazy when I heard the story, found out about it, like, oh my gosh, and of course that person felt ridiculous. You'll never catch her again. The problem is, you don't want that first time to happen,
No.
right? And the second time was Facebook fraud, and I was actually, my account was stolen, and things were said, and it continued to go down that path, and the feeling of violation that you have from just that, crazy. Which, by the way, hacked.com will get your account back.
Oh, really?
They were great. Hacked.com. Got on, it was crazy.
And many of these things are connected because in these wire fraud situations, the people that get prosecuted are the people that are caught up in a romance scam that get talked into going and setting up a bank account at a certain bank, which is where the real estate wire goes to they can find the person that set that bank account up. And when you get to them, it's always related to a romance scam. It's so sad.
Yeah.
And those are the wrong people.
Is
to
that
get
what that's called,
prosecuted.
what I just explained?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing. Keith, you had your experience, but it has a name. A romance scam. Like there's a common school of thought around it. There are experts around this because it is so common.
Right.
And it's only going to be increasingly common until there's no more reward
Right.
for the crime. And there's
But the
tremendous
money
reward.
mule, the person that sets up that bank account, is easily found. And those are the people that get prosecuted.
Yeah. So it's always the middleman. It's never the crime boss, so to
Right.
speak, at the top of the food chain. Marty, if there were kind of putting an executive summary on this conversation, just some quick leave behinds for our listeners as to things to keep their wits about them on. It sounds like it is. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Doesn't cost you anything to verify it.
Don't wire. Skip it if you can.
Right.
Right.
There are options.
Bring a check.
Related
Use
to
different options to
payment
bring that
remittances.
payment.
Absolutely. And then if it can be done face to face, pursue that option.
Correct.
You utilize all of your resources about you. What am I missing?
So first of all of us should figure out how to do this. If you haven't went to your personal email account to see if rules have ever been set, you need to figure out how to do that. I do have flashcards that anybody that reaches out to me I can share. I have them for Gmail, I have them for Yahoo, I have them for Outlook, and it'll walk you through how to go to settings and see if rules have ever been set, because you might not be buying real estate today, but you might buy it a year from now, 2 years from now. If those rules are there, you're really going to be targeted. And it's no shame. All of us, the first time we got a text message saying our Netflix account was suspended and we needed to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I want to watch TV tonight.
Yeah.
I
Or
better
the easy pass things.
Easy pass, lots of things. All those are phishing things, trying to get your credentials. So that's an easy one. And most of it is just don't expect last minute changes. All these things will say change of plans. Now you've got to do this. You have to realize that's part of the scheme. Anytime there's urgency, anytime there's a change in bank account information involved in your transaction, face-to-face is great. Good hygiene in just cybersecurity training, and this could be to protect the company you work for. I mean, one of the very first things we did at Stewart when wire fraud became a thing is we had to create a human firewall. And so we had to train all of our employees, and to this day, we test our employees daily, and the tests are phenomenal. Are they going to click on something they shouldn't click on, which could subject our systems to a ransomware attack or anything like that? You have to be trained. You have to be testing constantly. Don't click on links in emails or text messages that you were not expecting.
How about on your phone?
That's part of why this problem is so prevalent, is the use of phones instead of computers. You know, most people never use a laptop anymore unless it's connected with their job. But in their personal life, they do everything from the phone. And you're telling me, since you've had an iPhone, you've never clicked on the wrong thing? And
Yep.
Right.
it's pretty scary to think back in time.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting.
Well,
Can I get basic really quick, just for
Yes.
our
Yes.
listeners that don't know this? So a lot of people don't really understand what a title company does. If you were to give an elevator pitch on why do you need a title company, why is a title company involved in the closing of a home and involved in that real estate transaction, how would you explain that?
I mean, we have two basic things that we do. First of all, we issue title insurance policies. So if you're buying real estate, we are going to issue you a title insurance policy effective the date your deed is recorded. And it's going to say, through this date, we're ensuring that you are the owner and nobody else has any claims to that property. And your property is subject to these liens or these easements and restrictive covenants, whatever. So you get an insurance product backed by a Stewart Title Guarantee Company. Then on the escrow side, we're going to handle all the funds and the paperwork to transfer title to you, to get your new loan established, receipt all the funds in, pay all the bills from your transaction, and on the hook for those things. So those
and keep it safe.
As a very basic level, those are the two main things that we do.
And in your space, as I also understand it, is, there's not many points of differentiation between a title company to another title company, except the training and the things that you're talking about right now, right?
Most people view it as a commodity, just like you just described. Kansas City happens to be one of those markets that is predominantly local title agents, not national companies. There is a big difference between that, and I'm not talking bad about any title agency.
Sure.
right.
But what is the financial wherewithal of the company you're doing business with? Stewart has $1 billion in reserves.
Yep.
We are federally regulated. Most title agents in Kansas City don't have either of those things.
Right.
Right? So know who you're doing business with. Who are you trusting with it? Underwriters, and everybody has an underwriter. You're issuing somebody's policy.
Sure.
It's just at Stewart, we're issuing Stewart policies.
Right.
But if you're XYZ title agency, you're writing a policy on an underwriter. That underwriter isn't going to cover the escrow activities of the title agents. So I think the financial wherewithal of that agency matters.
That's the point of
What if one of their
differentiation.
employees wires money to the wrong place? Who's going to make you whole?
Sure. Right.
It matters.
You got a better opportunity with someone with $1 billion in the bank, right?
Correct.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think that the takeaway for me in this is that you can do a lot as an individual to protect yourself, but you can't do it all. And a company can do a lot to help protect you, but they can't do it all. It really takes that teamwork between the individual and those helping them through navigate that transaction in concert with one another to really provide the full suite of protection necessary to complete a successful transaction.
Sure.
Let me talk a little bit more about our partnership with Certified. When we exchange wiring instructions with our clients, we use Certified's secure portal. We don't just get the secure portal, but when we send or receive wiring instructions in that manner, through Certified, we get $1 million of coverage from Lloyd's of London. Okay? That protects us and the client that exchanged those instructions with us. So that's great extra protection. When we order a payoff letter, getting ready to pay off a loan for the seller, when I receive that payoff letter back from the mortgage company or the bank, I send that payoff letter to Certified. They will verify that that is the routing number and the account number for that institution. And once again, I get $1 million of coverage through Lloyd's of London if I do that.
Wow. Massive systems of checks and balances and huge parachutes.
Every day. Yes.
Very interesting.
Well, hopefully this does give, rather than instilling fear, it does give confidence that there are systems that if you avail them yourself of them to help you navigate this.
Right.
So that's what this is all about, is let's supplement that desire to be a homeowner by also making it safe to
Right.
pursue homeownership.
Make sure you become a homeowner.
That's right, exactly, and not a statistic like unfortunately many in the country and across the world have throughout this process.
And if you're a buyer and you wire your down payment to the wrong place, you don't just put that money at risk. You put the home you thought you were purchasing at risk.
Right.
Yeah.
The seller's not going to wait for you
No.
to figure this out. They're going to put the house back on the market, sell it to somebody else. So
Right. You lose
most real
twice.
estate transactions are done because of life events, right? You're pregnant, you're getting transferred, you're getting married, you know what I mean?
Right.
Those life events don't wait
Nope.
Right.
for this.
They
So probably the loss of the home you thought you were going to purchase is one of the worst things that happens.
Yeah.
Sure.
Something that you've aspired to, you've worked hard, your fingers to the bone for, and then poof, it's gone. And given today's housing inventory environment,
Right.
there's not going to be a lot of stuff on the shelf to just say, well, I'll move on to my second choice. That may have been your only opportunity.
It
that
affects
moment in
everybody,
time.
the real estate professional, the potential homeowner, everyone.
So we need confident, safe pursuits
Right.
of home ownership. So that's
Correct.
what today has been about. Well, Marty, thank you very much for this conversation. We've got, this is an ongoing conversation within the HBA, and we hope it's an ongoing conversation in the homes of all of the listeners of this podcast, because this is not a set it and forget it thing. Like, I've got my protections in place, I'm good, and I never have to think about it again. This is behavior. It is not an action. When it comes to these protections. This was not one of the things that you, our listener, asked us to talk about, but it was something that we thought we needed to bring to you. But we do want to know what it is that you want to hear about this podcast in future episodes. So please go to kchba.org/podcast and leave us a note or ask a question, and we may get to you in a future episode. Again, this is Will Reuter with the HBA After Hours podcast.
And I am Keith Sara, and we want to thank once again Bovard Insurance and Builders First Source for sponsoring today's podcast.
And of course, our esteemed guest, Marty Albertson.
Thank you.
Whether he wanted to be or not a cyber crime fighter in his adult years, and grateful for you and Stewart Title lending your time to be on this podcast today, but all you do to protect home ownership in the future.
Thanks for the invite.
Pleasure to
Absolutely.
meet you.
You too.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks.